Welcome to the Lifestyle Builders Podcast, Show 31. In our last episode, we talked with guest Christy Bender, who is not your average CPA, all about tax strategies and saving you money in your business. Today, we're chatting on how to set up bookkeeping systems and processes. Welcome to the Lifestyle Builders Podcast, where we bring you real-life strategies on starting and growing a business and finding financial freedom without sacrificing the life you have with your loved ones. We are your hosts, Tom and Ariana Sylvester, and we are married, we're parents, and we're serial entrepreneurs. This podcast is for those who want more out of life. We'll show you how to take the vision you have and create the business that will help you achieve it. Join us as we share practical steps, real-life stories, and help you become a lifestyle builder.
Wow.
Wow.
The money month of May.
The money month of May continues.
So, can I get you to do that in like a country?
No.
No.
Hard no.
All right, just checking. So, before we get into this, I want to talk about what it means to be an entrepreneur. We've talked in previous episodes about like being the boss of your business and whatever. And sometimes that requires you to get into roles that you maybe don't like or don't fit into. Mm-hmm. This is a bookkeeping episode.
This is commonly one of those roles.
One of the roles that, people tend to fall into is they have to do their books.
Yep.
And I started out doing this and then I shoveled it off to you.
Shoveled. I love how you use that analogy.
I did. I'm like, how do I get rid of this?
Well, and you're very lucky in the fact that I was able to take that on because bookkeeping is usually a very foreign type of it's not like keeping a budget in your personal finances. Bookkeeping is very different with how you have to assign certain things and how you want them to show up on your books, and then kind of how you advocate certain things in certain places. And I was lucky in the fact that I had a little bit of an introduction to that in one of the jobs that I had. And I had my introduction to QuickBooks came from that job. So I had like a tiny bit of, this system seems sort of familiar. And when our CPA created our accounts for us when we started those businesses, which was a really nice piece, he kind of said, okay, well, I've created the accounts for you. Here are all these things. And I had to get comfortable with what all that meant. I remember emailing him many times when we first got started just to clarify, okay, I'm putting this here, I'm assigning this over here. I wanted to make sure that I was doing all of that right so that at the end of the year, when we handed our stuff off to him, he didn't have to come back to us with a million questions, which I'm sure that first year he had a few.
Yeah, well, there's a feature within QuickBooks that says "Ask my accountant,"
I
and
use that one all the time.
I know you use that one quite a few times, but bookkeeping is one of them. But another interesting one that I'm sure people don't know is when we opened the wine and liquor store, you were actually doing the majority of our ordering. Yet you don't like wine, and you barely ever drink liquor.
Correction. I have found a small list of wines.
I can count on one hand the number of wines you like. And some of them, I don't even know if you can technically consider their wine.
No.
But yeah, so you, I remember, because I had a decent I thought I had a decent understanding of wine and liquor, and then we opened the store and I'm like, I have no idea. But and I had done some research on the different types of wines, because I had the ones I liked, and then I knew nothing about the other ones.
Yeah, of course, because why would you?
But we would be at the store when we first opened, and a customer would come in and you'd be like, oh, the Riesling grape, blah blah blah, and I'm like, who is this? You've never even tasted a Riesling wine.
Well, let's be honest. I kind of had to force some of that knowledge in order to be able to correctly do the inventory ordering. I needed to know enough about the types of wines, the types of grapes, the types of liquors, and what made them different, so that when I was ordering, I was kind of covering all of our bases and making sure that we had everything we needed to have. And then, because we were there, we owned the business, and occasionally we had to work there for that first month or whatever. I had people asking me questions, and it's not a very good situation when you have customers coming in and you can't answer their questions. So I kind of made it my priority to learn enough to be able to do that skill well.
Well, and your last line, I think, is a great kind of lead into the show. And this theme that we've had, obviously it's the money month of May, But what we've also had kind of running through this month has been this theme of like being the boss of your business and being a leader in your business. And you just said it perfectly. Like you figured out and knew enough to be able to get the job done. Yep. And that's what we've all got to do. And especially when we talk about books, nobody wants to do their books, but it's a necessary and very important part.
We just watched a show on The Profit where the guy didn't even want, he was an accountant.
Yeah, and he didn't even want to do the books.
He invested into a business with his partners, and he didn't even want to do the books.
And their books weren't even updated. No. And I mean, that's a big part of like their issue.
I found that very funny.
Yeah, that was ironic.
And before we jump into the show, I do want to mention that this actual topic was submitted by one of our members from the Family Entrepreneur Life Facebook group, Chris Brooks. So he was the one who was like, I want you guys to cover this topic on the show. So we wanted to make sure we shouted him out now that we have started in on this topic.
Well, and especially because this is such an important topic, and sometimes people either avoid it or they don't even know they need it.
True.
You know, and it's just kind of like you hear about it, but it's like, what is that really?
Yeah. All right. So let's dive in. What is it and why is it important? Bookkeeping, keeping the books.
I have no idea.
If I was close enough, I would smack you right now.
All right. So essentially keeping the books, we've talked before about you've got the sales and marketing piece of your business, you've got operations, and then you've got finance. And essentially what keeping the books is tracking every financial transaction that comes into and goes out of your business. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of think about it like doing a budget and then checking back in. But there's just a little bit more complexity because when, let's say, money comes in, you might classify it a certain way.
Yep.
So, you know, I guess to simplify this, if you were to look at your bank statement, there's really like debits and credits. So there's money that comes into your account, which is debits, and then money that goes out, which is credits.
Yep.
When you're doing your books, essentially you're taking every one of those transactions from your bank account, from your credit card,
to a certain place.
And you're assigning it to a certain place. And by the magic of this software and doing all of that, you'll generate those reports that we talked about in our last episode.
Magic.
Yeah. So by doing all of this, ultimately you're going to put the right, like, what does Christy say? Like, tiny little boxes or tiny little numbers and tiny little boxes about stuff that happened in the past.
Yep.
That's really what this is. But by putting all those numbers in their right places, it then allows you to see your financial reports and understand how your business is doing.
Yeah, and if you're doing it or if you have someone doing it in your business, it also allows your CPA at the end of the year to file things for you, and if you've done it the right way, hopefully they can find more deductions for your business and save you some money on your taxes. A lot of the times they'll find people that have done their own, and when they get a hand on their books, they're like, whoa, do you realize you could be saving $10,000 because of the way you keep your books and the way that you file your taxes? And people are like, no, really? So it is really important to have a good handle on this stuff, because when you hand it to your accountant, the better you are keeping track of it, the more chance they have to be able to find you those deductions and file differently so that you can save money.
Yeah, well, and to that point, you know, whenever we talk about this, all I think about is like, I don't know, a TV show or something where it's like the person bringing the shoebox full of receipts. Like, I don't even know where that came from, but if
that'd be a funny movie.
Yeah, but if you're not managing your books and you go to your account at the end of the year, they're going to actually charge you to basically update your books throughout the year. Yep. And it's going to cost you a lot more money.
And they might miss things because if you're not keeping track of it, how are they supposed to know what's happening throughout the year in your business? Like, they're not going to remember that, oh, by the way, I don't have a receipt for it, but I spent $500 on going to a conference.
Yep.
If you don't have track of that somewhere, they can't help you take that deduction for your business. So yeah, it's a good system for not only for keeping track, but also we talked about looking forward. So analyzing your data, tracking how things are going and what things look like throughout the year. It's hard to do that if you don't have a system that allows you those reports, those big picture numbers.
Yeah, I mean, so there's benefits all around, and this is something that you can't avoid. If you try to avoid doing this, at the end of the year when tax time comes, I mean, there's some people that just try to not do it, not file taxes. It's all going to catch up with you. So one of the things is when you start your business, this should be one of the first things you do.
Yep.
Talking to an accountant, or at least setting up, your system. And, we'll probably get to this later in the show, but there's a lot of different ways to set it up. But I mean, it's critical for understanding where your business is, understanding the money, saving yourself money, on your taxes because you're taking the right deductions, all of that.
Yeah. So I want to jump into just talking about how to even get started with that, because I know a lot of people say maybe you're just starting out and you've looked at some of the tools out there for tracking your accounts, and you're like, oh, well, I'm new, so I don't think I need an accounting software yet. But I want to make sure that I'm tracking all of the stuff, that I'm putting my processes in place. How do I get started doing that?
Yeah, so one of the first things, like we said, so think about this being your bank account, and what you're going to be doing is basically tracking all of the transactions coming in your business. So yeah, there's some businesses that we work with that are just getting started. You might, let's say you invested $1,000 into your business, and then you really don't have a lot of transactions going through yet. You could use a simple spreadsheet or something like that, just to track what are you spending, what are you making, and get a start on that.
Yep.
And then eventually, usually sooner than later, especially once transactions start coming through, you probably want to get an accounting system set up. But I mean, there's sometimes you might spend the first couple of months in your business just doing research and testing things out and trying to get things figured out.
Yep.
So yeah, it may not be the absolute first thing you got to do, but especially as money starts to come in, then you want to really figure out, okay, let me get transitioned over to the system. And the longer you wait, one, the less view you're going to have into your business as it grows. But then two, the more you're going to have to play catch up later on by getting all of that transitioned into a system.
Yeah, well, and one of the most important parts of getting this whole system set up for you is actually having a good understanding of what your processes are in your current business. So we've talked about it. There's tons of different industries out there. There's a lot going on within your business. So even knowing how to get started with keeping your books, keeping your accounts up to date, or what system's right for you, comes back to what are the key activities and key things in your business model that you need to be keeping track of. So obviously anything to do with money, if you have customers, if you have products, if you have expenses and people like vendors you're buying things from, all of that is going to need to be kept track of within, if you're doing your own spreadsheet or if you've purchased an accounting software. But the important part is also, how is all of that knowledge being shared and entered into that? Because I know a lot of people, myself included, have struggled with okay, I know I have to put all of this information in. How often do I do it? Is it going to be me or somebody else doing it? How often are we going to print reports out and look at those reports? If we need to make changes, how are we going to go about that process? And kind of everything that's involved. If you have customers that you print invoices for, how are you doing that? Are you creating a customized invoice? Are you buying a template from somebody that you're using? How do you send those invoices? How do you pay bills that come in? How do you check off in your software when somebody's paid an invoice? And how do you take payments? All of these things that you don't really think of because they're kind of the small details are all going to be involved in this bookkeeping process and this accounting process for you.
Yeah, and this is why, usually the earlier you started, and it doesn't mean you got to, go crazy from the beginning, but just getting into that habit and routine then makes it easier to add things on and all of that. But the longer you delay, like I said, then it's more challenging because then you got to go kind of play catch up. And then oftentimes it's more difficult for you to understand because then you're trying to figure everything out at once instead of just, starting with the basics. And then, hey, a transaction came in. How do I move it? Where is it allocated to? All right, now I get it. And as your volume starts to increases, and it's not so overwhelming.
Yeah, and some of the hardest pieces are, in order to be able to outsource something like your bookkeeping or your accounting, you have to have a process in place before you hand it off to somebody. So whether that's going to be somebody that you hire into your own business, or if that's a contractor that you're outsourcing it to, you have to have a good handle on all of that information before you hand it off to somebody and say, here, you take care of this, and then give me all the info that I need to know in order to run my business.
Yep, because otherwise they're just going to keep coming back to you and asking questions. And so, by the way, you talk about outsourcing. This is one of the things that every business should outsource. My belief is you've got to get in. It's good to do this at the beginning just to make sure you understand enough of it. But this is not something that most people are good at.
Correct.
And it's not something that you want to be doing for a long period of time. So the sooner that your business can afford to and that you can outsource this, it's going to free up time, it's going to free up some stress. But you want to make sure when you outsource it, like you said, you're getting reports on the right time frame. And then going back to our last episode, you understand how to read those reports and utilize them in your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, here's the dog, everybody. All right, so I think we kind of covered all of that. Like, how does your business function? Map out your processes that you currently use to track basic accounts in and out. And then talking about who's going to be responsible for your bookkeeping. Is that going to be somebody in your business? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be something you hire out?
Yeah, well, and so the one question you asked, which I think is a good thing to talk about, is how often do we need to be looking at these things?
Yep.
And, there's not like a one-size-fits-all answer, but the key thing is often enough so that you can make good decisions in your business. At a minimum, I would recommend generating these statements and then looking at them once a month. We already tell people that you should be doing a monthly budget, and then at the end of the month, basically reflecting back and basically reconciling to say, all right, we thought we were going to spend $500 on marketing. How much did we actually spend?
Yep.
And then planning out the next month based on that. So monthly is a really good time to be able to review each of these and then use that to basically plan out your next month. Outside of that, you talked before about vendors and paying bills and whatever else. So it may actually be good to look at these more often. Mm-hmm. So there's additional reports that a lot of these accounting softwares can generate that will say, all right, here's, we'll introduce a couple new terms now.
Yes.
So your accounts payable is basically money that you owe out to other people. So your accounting software, if you keep it up to date and you use the reports, it can say, here's how much money you owe out to vendors or to other things. And here's when it's due. On the flip side, if you say deliver a service and you don't get paid right away, it will then also show you accounts payable. Receivable, sorry. Been a long day.
I got you covered.
Money month of May, long day.
And you're rhyming now.
Yes, I am. So accounts receivable will then say how much is owed to me. So you'll start to see as you get into some of this that this is key to running your business, because if people owe you money, you want to have a good process in place to collect that. So you may actually look at this weekly or every 2 weeks. And then depending on how much transaction and volume's coming into your business, if you have a lot of transactions and a lot of money moving around, you may want to be looking at it and make sure it's updated more frequently, because if there's an issue, you want to catch it faster.
Yeah, and now this comes into play for a lot of entrepreneurs, because in the service-based business, oftentimes we have services where people pay a portion up front and then you deliver the rest on work completed. So when you have different things coming in and going out at different times, it is essential to have all of this kept track of in your bookkeeping system, because there is nothing worse than, as we talked about in the last episode, those money problems where your cash flow in doesn't match your cash flow out, and you've got all these stressful times throughout the year where that happens to you. So having an accounting system where you can say, okay, we've got multiple clients who owe us money, and we've got these bills that are coming due, those are going to be indications for your business to adjust your processes a little bit so that you're getting those payments that you need before you have those payouts that you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you were talking, and we've talked a couple times about accounting systems. So let's talk about what options are out there and how people can pick.
Yeah, a lot of times people struggle with choosing the right accounting software. I don't want to choose the one that's wrong. I don't want to pay for something I don't need. I don't want to buy something that I'm not going to be able to learn how to use. So there are a couple systems out there that are often recommended by accountants and CPAs. You'll hear about these. QuickBooks is a big name that's thrown around.
Yeah, I mean, QuickBooks is essentially kind of like the go-to. I think it's probably shifting away from that a little bit, just as other options become out there.
QuickBooks was a large choice for most people.
Yeah, I mean, most CPAs, most accountants are going to use QuickBooks by default. It doesn't mean that you can't use another piece of software, but oftentimes, especially when you're picking your CPA, if you use the same one they use, it's just going to make things a little bit easier.
Yep.
And that's what we use for all three of our businesses.
Yeah, and then there are some kind of lighter options where QuickBooks does have quite a large learning curve if you're buying the desktop version.
Yep, there's a lot of features. It's full
a software
featured.
You actually have to put on your computer and install.
Yep. You buy it for a one-time fee.
Yes, a ton of features. I mean, we love it for that reason because we have a ton of options. But for a lot of people who are just getting started, it's very overwhelming
absolutely.
choice. So there are a lot of online cloud-based accounting softwares now where QuickBooks has an online version you pay per month, and it's just a little bit of a lighter accounting software. There's Xero, there's FreshBooks, there's Wave. I am sure there are others that I am missing or don't know about. But what it comes down to is which of those tools is going to be the best fit for your business and the key activities that you need to track.
Yeah, I mean, the general guidance we give whenever anybody is asking for a tool recommendation is to define your process, define the requirements of what you need, and then weigh that against the different options out there. Because like for us, for example, we've always used QuickBooks Desktop, but it's a one-time fee and we can run all of our businesses from there.
Yeah, so we have 3 different business accounts through QuickBooks.
Correct.
For our 3 different businesses. If we were to go with QuickBooks Online, we have to pay separately for each account. So we would be paying 3 times as much monthly as if we had, compared to a person that has one business, this isn't always paying for one account. So
Yep.
for us, it made more sense. We buy the software. Every year or two, we upgrade to the newer software, and we split it out between our businesses to take on that cost.
Yeah, and I mean, part of this too is not all software is created equal. So just because something's cheaper doesn't mean it's the best option.
Correct.
Some of these don't necessarily create all the reports you want.
Yep, and they
some
don't
of
give you the
them,
options to customize as much.
Correct. And some of them may actually, you might have to do extra work in order to give it to your CPA at the end of the year, depending on what they do or what features they have. But I mean, from I think a lot of the accountants we've talked to, obviously, I think QuickBooks is still kind of the de facto. QuickBooks Online is an option.
Yep.
I think Xero, I've heard a lot of good things about.
Yeah,
we
I've heard
haven't
a lot of
used
people
any of the
prefer-
cloud-based ones.
Yeah.
FreshBooks, I think some people have kind of said, it's okay, but it doesn't have all the features. So yeah, I really think it's key for you to kind of figure out your process, figure out your needs, and then check. And then, I mean, if you have a CPA or accountant, ask what they think too, because they're going to be the one that's working with you on a lot of this.
Yeah, and I mean, this is all going to come down to your business and the level of complexity you have within it. And again, the dog. So obviously, if you have a business where the only transactions are the money coming in from paying clients and then the money going out for your expenses, there's not a whole lot else going on with assets and liabilities and all that stuff we talked about in the last episode, you might be okay with just the cloud-based version of QuickBooks or Xero Online. Whereas if you have a more complex business and you've got the accounts payable and accounts receivable stuff going on, and you've got an inventory, or you've got just a very large business with a lot of transactions coming in and going out, something like QuickBooks Desktop does give you more capabilities, whether you have somebody you've hired in-house to take care of that or you're delegating your bookkeeping out. That gives them more options to create customized accounts and classes and categories within there, and to run customized reports for you, because that's the feature that I personally love about QuickBooks Desktop is we can create our own reports and based on the things that we want to see in our business.
Yep. Another thing, if you end up going with one of the cloud-based solutions, oftentimes they'll have apps that you can use on your phone or tablet.
Yes.
Which is sometimes nice as well to be able to pull up information, regardless of which device you're on or where you're at.
Yep.
So, like we said, it's a key to just kind of look at all that criteria and then make the best decision for you. Oftentimes, you can get free trials on some of the cloud-based stuff.
Yep.
And test things out, and obviously read reviews or whatever.
Yeah. All right. I personally, this is my homework for this week. I want to know if you currently use an accounting software in your business. Post up and either as a comment on the show notes page, or if you're in our Facebook group or on our business page, tell us which one you use and why you chose it. Because I'm always interested in hearing that from people.
So I'm going to repeat my homework from last week because you probably didn't do it. Make sure that if you don't have some sort of software or some way to do your books, do that. And then ultimately what we want you to do is to generate those 3 reports that we talked about last time. So you're going to generate your profit and loss statement, your cash flow statement, and then your balance sheet. So if you haven't done that from last week, that's okay. We're not going to call you out, maybe a little bit. But do it now. This is a really good activity while you're listening to this, while you have this fresh, to get your accounting and your bookkeeping system in place, and then run those reports and start getting a better handle on your business.
All right. What's your book for us on the bookshelf today?
Super exciting book today.
You say that so sarcastically and excitedly.
So last episode, I talked about Finance Without Fear, and it was an easy read, whatever. This one's a little bit drier. It's called Keeping the Books. Basic record keeping and accounting for a successful small business. And you can see, just like with most of the books, there's papers bookmarks. And bookmarks and all of that. But when we first got started, one of the things I knew was that we had to at least understand what the books were. And what's nice about this book compared to some of the other ones, it is pretty basic, so you can kind of understand. It goes through the different ways that accounting is, and even explains some of the nuances, because when you get into how accounting works, everything's got to like balance, and there's these different rules, so it can get complicated. But then what's nice here too is they also talk about the different types of taxes you'll pay, when you typically have to do them. So it gets into some of the like more boring and dry stuff, but it does it in a good way to at least educate you on it. Yeah. And then what I've used it more for is like just to get a basic understanding, but then to go and reference. Yep. Like when we say, all right, we're setting up kind of our time frames for taxes for the year. Maybe we just started a new business. Now we can go in and say, all right, have we covered everything? Yeah. Because sometimes when you look online, even if you go to the IRS site or anywhere else, you may not get the right information, or it may not be accurate. So this is really good just to have around. And even when you hire your books out, your bookkeeper might say something or whatever, and you can use this as a reference just to understand. Yeah,
I love that. I mean, not every book is going to be fun to read. I know you try really hard to make all of your bookshelf choices interesting and fun for people to go and read. But obviously, yes, we are talking about bookkeeping, which is not always people's favorite thing to learn about. So
yeah, and I mean, if you look at this too, I mean, it's a bigger book. The text is big, and there's a little bit of overlap from even the last book, because they talk a little bit about your financial statements and whatever. So the other nice thing is sometimes if you read something twice or you see it from a different source, it might sink in. So you might read something in Financial Fear, and then you come and do it here, and you're like, oh, now I get it. So when my bookkeeper does this, and then they produce this statement, this is what I can do. So it might click by reading it from a different perspective.
All right. I like it. All right, you guys, it's been another great episode with Tom and Ariana, your hosts and lifestyle builders.
And as always, it's your life, your business, your way. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Do you want real-time guidance and support from seasoned entrepreneurs who really care about your results? If you're nodding your head or awkwardly shouting yes in public somewhere, then we invite you to join Lifestyle Builders, a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. You can find out more at joinlifestylebuilders.com.
Your life, your business, your way. Join Family Entrepreneur Life. Join Family Entrepreneur